What's going on, you guys? And welcome back to yet another episode of the Unspoken Rules podcast. I'm your host, Sebastian, aka Rabid, joined by the wonderful Montana, aka Wildcard, and of course, Mr. Blake Spillers. How we doing today, boys?
I'm flattered again. You're giving me such high praise. Wonderful today, huh?
And I'm doing great as usual. Sebastian, thanks for asking.
It's been a very busy week for all of us, from work to Montana and Blake both starting the new show on our podcast network called Nerdum. There are 2 episodes in. Obviously, they'll talk about it more a little bit later. But let's just get right into it. You know, we got some topics to talk about today. First, obviously, the Bucks breakdown. Excuse me. Willie Green closing in on becoming the new New Orleans Pelicans head coach. Bradley Beal being put into health and safety protocol. Tokyo virus cases being at a 6-month high with games approaching. And finally, we'll end the show with some rapid fire stats. But let's just get right into episode 29, why don't we?
Alrighty. The main topic, the only topic that's really the main topic of today's show, the Milwaukee Bucks tying the NBA Finals at 2 games apiece against the Phoenix Suns by winning 109-103 in Game 4. We had the Bucks. The top man for the Bucks was Chris Middleton yesterday. Had 40 points, 4 assists, and 6 rebounds. Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, was no slouch yesterday as well. Had 26 points, 14 rebounds, and 8 assists, and had one of the best defensive plays of the finals so far with that crucial block against DeAndre Ayton late in the game. Besides that, Drew Holiday had 13.7 rebounds and 7 assists. Had a pretty pedestrian game, if you ask me. As far as the Suns go, Devin Booker was the only real player that really wanted this game for the Phoenix yesterday. He had 42 points, 2 assists, and 1 rebound. You could say the other stats in the box score weren't as great as the 42 points, but he did get the job done in the scoring department. Chris Paul pretty much disappeared yesterday at 10.7 assists and 4 rebounds. And DeAndre Ayton had 17 rebounds, but the scoring numbers were not as high as in the previous games. So, guys, with the Bucks tying the series at 2 games apiece, do we feel that the Suns are mentally shattered at the moment, and can they bounce back in Game 5 and steal back home court advantage?
Well, I think they definitely can. I don't think the Suns are really in any danger in this series. That doesn't mean I don't think the Bucks have a chance of winning this series, because I think the Bucks pretty much at this point, I think it's about 60-40 in favor of the Suns, in my opinion, in terms of who's going to win this series. I mean, the Bucks did what they did. They play really well at home. They showed out and they won the 2 games. But what I've noticed is both teams really have not been able to shoot the 3-ball well. In the last couple of games, I've seen both teams struggle to shoot even 30-something% from the 3-point line, which is crazy to think because both teams are supposed to be decent 3-point shooting teams. I mean, you've got Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, D Book, Chris Paul, a bunch of players that are all capable of hitting threes on the Suns. And you've got PJ Tucker, who's supposed to be a corner specialist, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Pat Connaughton, also a bunch of players that are supposed to be able to shoot threes. And we just haven't been seeing that lately. And that's out of both teams. I mean, I think last night the Suns shot 30% from 3 and the Bucks shot 24%. It's kind of crazy to think about because the Suns ended up shooting 51% from the field after shooting so poorly from the 3-point line. It just doesn't make sense. But shout out to the Bucks for knocking down free throws last night. I think that's a huge difference maker in this series. If the Bucks are able to consistently shoot free throws, which a lot of that obviously comes down to Giannis and whether or not he's able to knock down free throws, it's a huge part of the game. But what surprised me the most is Middleton showed up yesterday. He had another 40-plus point game, and that was huge because Giannis, even though he didn't have as big of a game as he did in the last 2, still had a good game with, I think it was 26 and 14, which is solid stat line considering another one of your players had 40 points. But where is CP3? The last 3 games, or the last 2 games, I should say, he's been turning the ball over a lot. He hasn't been scoring very many points. We're not seeing that many assists out of him. And that's really been the difference maker in the last 2 games. The Suns work the best when Chris Paul is at his best. When other players are struggling for the Suns, usually as long as Chris Paul is playing well, they're going to win the game. Because Chris Paul has the biggest impact, I think, on the floor for the Suns team. Because when he's got the ball moving well, when he's got the thing, when he's going at in fast break, when he's not turning the ball over, this Suns team is one of the best teams in the league. But when we see a Chris Paul like we saw last night with a measly stat line of 10 points and 7 assists, you can't expect to win games that way. And shout out to the Suns for keeping the game within 6 points after that poor performance, because like you said, Montana, other than Devin Booker, nobody really showed up for the Suns. Usually we have the Suns role players playing huge minutes like DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, even Cameron Johnson. We usually expect them to put up good stats, but really they didn't really do much. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, of course, cleaned up the boards, had 17 rebounds. He's a beast at rebounding, but only 6 points. Watching that game, he just looked frustrated out there. Sorry, go ahead, Montana.
If you're a star player and if you're supposed to be that third guy in the big three, 6 points is not going to cut it, especially if you're the number one pick in the draft. And yes, you can say that he had the 17 rebounds with the 6 points. That clearly has got to change if they want to win the series. Because DeAndre Ayton, in my opinion, he's the key if the Suns are going to pull this out.
No, he really is. And he just, the Bucks were playing really good defense on him. I mean, there's nothing else to say. There were multiple possessions in a row where it looked like DeAndre Ayton had an easy post up with like Pat Connaughton switched on him. And then the Bucks would either switch someone else on him or double team him. And it just flustered him, it looked like. He got mad early in the game. He got in a little bit of foul trouble with a couple of calls he didn't like. And you could tell that he was frustrated, and it definitely affected his play last night. But going back to the original question, I still expect the Suns to win the series. I don't see the Bucks being able to win a game in Phoenix, which they will have to do to win the series. And with that being said, I think I said my original before the series started, I think it's going to go to 7, and I think that's where we're headed. I think we're headed to a 7-game series, but I expect the Suns to be able to pull it out. Sebastian?
No, I mean, everything you pretty much covered is pretty, factual. At least when it comes down to the Suns aspect, I don't think we're going to see another poor performance like this from Chris Paul. Ultimately, sure, 10 points, 7 assists, and whatever the case may be is poor. And 19 points last game that he had was poor, but it wasn't as bad as obviously this game because you're not getting the production from everybody else. You expect more from Mikal Bridges. You expect more from DeAndre Ayton. You expect more from that bench, especially without Dario Saric. As much as he doesn't really impact the team, he usually spaces, or he has the ability to space the core out and hit some big shots, as his name is Big Shot Saric. So with missing him out with the torn ACL, obviously it shouldn't be as impactful as it is, but it's clearly a case for the Suns in the sense of missing that extra person, that extra body, as well as ultimately just everybody getting in foul trouble. Devin Booker early getting into foul trouble, obviously questionable, should have been a foul out with 3 minutes and 10 seconds left on Drew Holiday. That's stirred a lot of controversy around the entire social media and whatnot.
There was a lot of stuff we had to talk. The officiating in the game yesterday was just completely out of, like, not even for both sides, not just only for the Bucks, but for the Suns as well. The officiating was a problem in yesterday's game.
Oh my goodness,
100%.
Soft calls.
100%. And it's unfortunate. Like I was saying this yesterday, what really needs to start happening when it comes to officiating is what we're seeing right now in the Olympics and those type of refereeing. Like we're seeing the USA team struggle and try to get calls because they're so used to being babied by the officials in the NBA now. So there's something that needs to happen to translate to our sport and our league in the aspect of officiating, because there's no reason that some of these baby calls are going to be made to help better these players. If anything, it's just making them soft. And honestly, it might potentially hurt us in the long run when it comes to Olympics, because if we start babying and keep babying these players, it's going to come down to they're going to lean in and try and do the little Dwayne Wade move, and they're not going to get the call. You know what I'm saying? So it just comes down to poor officiating last night, or at least questionable officiating, I should say, to say the least. As well as obviously you don't get your productivity from DeAndre Ayton, as Blake mentioned. He just looked sluggish out there offensively. I don't know what it was, if it was just his attitude. It just basically looked like game 2 or game 3 all over again in the mindset of he got irritated very early and they started doubling him, and it seemed like he just wasn't ready to play tonight. And it is what it is. Ultimately, you can only do so much. But like Blake said, credit to the Suns for making that game such a close one, even with poor performances from everybody, as a supporting cast. Now, to get to the Milwaukee Bucks, obviously credit to Chris Middleton, who I've been kind of talking crap about lately. He actually stepped up today. They needed some sort of performance. They didn't get their 40 something from Giannis that they clearly are accustomed to, but they got it from Chris Middleton. So credit to Chris Middleton for actually stepping up and being the superstar, all-star that everybody has seen on different nights and different occasions. But I honestly, with the fact that with his inconsistency, I just don't see him dropping another 40 piece. Obviously, maybe Giannis will continue to do it after this game, but it's just something that Chris Middleton needs to come out and be this aggressive time and time again. It can't be, okay, I'm going to disappear for 3 games, and then, that 4th game, I'm going to drop 40 or whatever the case may be. Like, Chris Middleton needs to come out, even though he scored 40 on 33 shots, pulling a Russell Westbrook type of stat. The fact of the matter is, he needs to either shoot that many times in order to get the 40, or he needs to make more shots and shoot a little bit less. But, credit to him for carrying the load in that aspect. Giannis obviously did his thing. And like you guys mentioned, free throws. Free throws were a big thing last night, at least for the Milwaukee Bucks, as they shot 29 total and made 24. And the Phoenix Suns shot 16 out of 19. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at it, those free throws were really the key factor in that aspect of points, because at the end of the day, they're free throws and they shot more and made more. So credit to them all around. Drew Holiday still, questionable offensively, but he did his thing defensively. But, it is what it – go ahead. I don't know. I don't want to – go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying he's MIA. I mean, we haven't seen him show up one time all series. I mean, the sad part is going into this season, I'm not even talking about the playoffs. I was a huge fan of Drew Holiday. I thought he was an all-star that was extremely underrated for what he does, because he's able to play such good defense while also being such a great offensive player. But this entire final series, we have not seen that. He's shooting like 30% or under almost every game, it seems like. It's a joke to me, because he's supposed to be that third guy on this team. He's getting paid all this money. It's just kind of a joke to me. But yeah, I was just trying to say he's MIA in this series, to say the least.
And a lot of Drew Holiday's shots are coming. He's like doing like crazy spin moves in the paint, and nothing is going. Those easy layup shots that he should be making are just not coming to him at all. They're either off center or just completely off the mark. This is not the type of shots he needs to be taking. I think he needs to rethink the strategy going into next game of how he's going to be more aggressive with his shot, because you can hurt your team by missing that many shots. I mean, it almost hurt them last night. If it wasn't for Chris Middleton, they would have lost the game.
You said it perfectly. I mean, he's got to start taking good shots. I mean, like you said, he's taking all these crazy shots. He's not really taking shots that are in rhythm in the offense. I've seen a lot of pull-up threes from him in this series. I've seen a lot of limited passes, him driving into 2 or 3 defenders, and like you said, taking a crazy spin around mid-range jumper. For Drew Holiday to step up, he just needs to let the offense come to him. Don't force bad shots because you're not hitting, especially when you're not hitting shots. Wait to take those tough shots once you've already got a feel for the game. Once you already start hitting a couple shots, hit some easy ones, get some good looks for yourself before you start taking these tough shots. Because like you said, Montana, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me why he's taking these ridiculous shots, especially when he hasn't been able to hit shots consistently all series. But going back to what you said earlier, Sebastian, about the refs, I'm glad you brought that up, because not only did it feel like the flow of the game was kind of intervened by the refs last night, but you bringing up the Olympic refs, I think that's the kind of basketball I enjoy watching the most. That is literally one of the main reasons I've been watching the Olympic basketball so far, even if it's just exhibition games, is because the refs let them play. You mentioned how a lot of the United States players are trying to draw fouls and they're not getting them. And I think they shouldn't ever get them. I mean, I love how the games are being reffed. And I think if the NBA wants to look themselves in the mirror, take a note from the Olympic referees, from the FIBA refs. That's how the game should be refs. It's not like they're letting them – it's not like it's 90s and 80s basketball where everyone's fouling and basically getting into fights and there's really aggressive fouls. No, they're not. They're calling those, but they're not calling the gimme. They're not calling the weak fouls. They're not calling the soft ones where you see the United States players just flailing their bodies in the defenders trying to get calls. I hate that. And I think if the NBA wants to improve viewership and consistently draw new fans into watching the league, they need to get rid of how they're reffing games, because not only are they making weak calls, but like I said, these weak calls are kind of getting rid of or getting in the way of game flow. And that's like the most important thing in not only the NBA, but kind of sports in general, is keeping a good game flow for not only, keeping teams in, not for the teams, sorry, but even for the fans. Fans want to see a good game flow. They don't want to constantly see stoppage. And for not only reviewing plays, but also just every single call, it feels like in the fourth quarter is getting reviewed. Every single time the whistle blows, it's 5 to 10 minutes we're taking off. The last 5 minutes of a fourth quarter takes 45 minutes. And that's why we're seeing a lot of people not watching NBA games personally.
No, yeah, it's literally insane to me, especially when Devin Booker got his fourth and fifth foul. It changed the momentum, and it kind of just shifted everything for those teams. Like, it was touch fouls. It wasn't like I'm gonna sit here and just say like, okay, I agree with the officiating on at least those two fouls. Those were literally touch fouls, and it's the problem in the NBA as a whole. Like, LeBron will drive into the lane, and a pinky will touch him, and it's a foul. Giannis will drive into the lane, does some crazy crap, gets like a little light touch on his arm, and it's a foul. You do that in the Olympics, and it's a completely different conversation. Nobody's gonna call that foul because they're letting, like you said, they're letting people play. It's especially in the playoffs and especially in the finals. We should just be letting these people play. Now, if it's something crazy and if it's clearly a foul, whether it's contact with a body to body or whatever the case may be, and it clearly affected the jump shot or the layup, I understand. But if it's a light touch that has no interference or no effect on the ability to make the shot and they just simply missed it, I don't understand why it's being called. I don't understand why they just continuously make that their rules. Like, oh, if it's a touch, Like, I don't understand their mindset, and I completely agree with you what you're saying when it comes to FIBA and their refs. Like, I think that just needs to be looked at, and honestly, I just hope that they fix this, because this is it's getting really bad the last couple of years, and it's honestly just pissing me off.
It's not even just that. It's just the play. It's really messing with. I believe it's messing with the mentality of some of these players.
Yeah.
The amount of times that I saw Devin Booker throw his hands up or look at the referee complaining the whole time, I was like, this guy's turning into LeBron James over here. And I've never seen that from Devin Booker, because Devin Booker was clearly flustered yesterday. And he's the last two games. I don't know. Yesterday he had 42 points, but even with the 42 points, he didn't look completely in his game, especially in that fourth quarter where he was in and out of the game because of the foul trouble that he was in late. That has to stop. He has to be able to stop fouling people so much. And even with that potential sixth foul later in the game, what was he thinking in that situation when he was going up against Jrue Holiday? Obviously, they didn't call a foul, but we all know it was a foul because he clearly wrapped himself around Jrue Holiday, and there was a ton of contact. But in that situation, you're risking yourself. There was about 4 minutes left in that game. You're risking yourself to potentially getting fouled out and not being there for your team in the last 4 minutes of the game. If you're a superstar player, you have to. That basketball IQ in that situation needs to be a little bit fixed in that instance, because he has to be there for his team and he has to be that leader, because in that moment he was not being that leader, and the complaining was just getting to him. I think the mentality with the referees was getting to him at that point. So it's not just him. It's all the NBA players. But I feel like it was more Devin Booker yesterday than it was with anyone else.
No, I mean, it's crazy to think, though, that like almost in every single NBA possession, no matter the playoffs or the regular season, you're seeing either a player flail his head back like this, or like you said, his hands go in the air. It's every possession someone's trying to draw a foul like that. It's the weakest thing to me. I hate watching it. Like, it's almost like I said, it'd be one thing if every now and then you get the head flailing back or the arms going up in the air, like, where's the foul at? But we see this every single possession. They're just headhunting for fouls. And now I think it really boils down to the refs, though. yes, the players are buying into it and not helping the fact, but it's because the refs are making the calls, which is why players are trying to take advantage of those calls and try and get fouls that aren't fouls. I hate it, but I understand why the players are doing it. If you can get a foul just by throwing your head back, by all means, I guess throw your head back. They're free throws. You want to get the team in foul trouble. You want to give yourself easy points. Obviously, that's why they're doing it. I mean, I hate the fact that the players are doing it, but I understand the reasoning behind it because they see it as if they're going to call it, you might as well do it. So, I mean, even though I don't like it, I think it really boils down to the NBA has to talk to its refs about changing these rules before we can expect the players to stop flopping all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
Jay Crowder was flopping like
oh yeah, I was
crazy
just gonna
yesterday.
say that.
Oh my god, man, dude, that has to be the number one thing on the NBA's agenda in the offseason. How can we limit flopping from the NBA players? Do we have to give them technical fouls, or do we have to kick them out of the game, suspend them for a game? Because this has to stop. Because it's more turning into a drama show out there than it is an actual basketball game.
No, yeah, I was just gonna mention the amount of times that I think he got like 5 or 6 fouls called on him, or like, for him, in the sense of just him flopping and getting with Giannis late, getting like slapping or like very lightly touching his nose, and he got like the over exaggeration.
It's like he was like dying on the basketball court. He barely even touched him.
Yeah, no, that
I was
was
like,
there
bro,
was
what the hell are
multiple
you doing?
times, and that's another thing too when it comes to like like what you guys were saying earlier, with officiating and slowing down the games. Like these players are selling it, so then it goes into, oh, is that a flagrant foul? Oh, is it this? Oh, is it like there's so many times last night at least that and it's crazy that we're even talking about officiating like this. Like it's just getting that bad, as well as obviously we're seeing great officiating in the Olympics. So it's just crazy to see overall this type of conversation being made. But I mean, let's just, we could just move past this a little bit. We could just move on to the next topic. But yeah, it's just crazy to me.
Yeah, even that. I want to get your guys' thoughts from after the game. Monty Williams was in the locker room. I don't know if you guys saw the clip where he was trying to pep talk his team up a little bit, saying that their heads were down, blah, blah, blah. You got to stay together as a team. There was a couple instances in the background with Darius Sarge. I think he was the highlight of that whole entire video. The expressions on his face was hilarious. But he's right. They have to stay together. If the Suns are going to come back and take back home court in Game 5, they have to play as a unit because they cannot start turning on each other now. This is he stated it completely right. It's hard. The NBA finals are hard. At this point in the game, this is it. This is either the final two teams in the league. These are the two teams that deserve it the most. You have to be able to be at the top of your game and play together as a team, because that's how you're going to win the championship. It's not going to be one player that wins the championship. It's going to be the whole entire team that wins that championship.
No, yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, that's Monty Williams is one of the greatest pep talkers in all of the NBA, and I think that's without a doubt. I mean, we see videos of it after every game now, whether they win or they lose. He's got something good to say. He's getting his team right. He's getting them in the right mindset for the next game. But I think the biggest thing is the home court advantage for the Suns. I think if the Bucks had the home court advantage, the Bucks would win this series. But the fact that the Suns have the home court advantage, like I said earlier, I don't see the Bucks being able to go to Phoenix and winning a game, and that's what it comes down to. The Bucks' only chance of winning a series is they have to win at least one game in Phoenix, whether it's Game 5 or Game 7, and I just don't see that happening. So that's why I think I've still got the Suns winning this series even after the series is tied.
No, yeah, 100%. I said that this series would go to 6. Obviously, it looks like it might go to 7. Credit to the Bucks for this entire postseason. They're now, after winning this one, 9-1 at home, and so at the end of the day, like, both teams have to win one game on the road. The question is who's going to do it, and so either Milwaukee has to do it to whenever the Game 5 is, or Game 7, or Phoenix ultimately has to do it and close it out in 6, because unless the Bucks win, you know what I'm saying? But we're just going under the impression that no team wins on the road. So it's going to be a very, very challenging one, to say the least. The only thing I'm going to close up here, at least on this, my end of the opinion, I think Chris Paul comes out, plays better. I think we see a better performance from DeAndre Ayton, and hopefully we can see this momentum continue for Chris Middleton and not see, an MIA version of Chris Middleton like we're accustomed to lately, at least in this postseason.
No, yeah, 100%. And I think the last thing I kind of want to ask you guys is, if this Bucks team isn't able to win the finals this year, what do they do to change this team, or do they leave it the same for the next year? Because for me, before I get your guys' answer, I feel like if the Bucks don't win it this year, they're never going to. Not with this roster. I think this was the best opportunity for them to win the finals. With injuries being included, I think like that really has helped them at least getting through the East and getting to face the Suns. And I just don't think that there's going to be another year, because I think each year the league's going to get more competitive. Teams around them are going to continue to get better. And with this Bucks roster, I don't know if they don't win the finals this year, I don't think they're ever going to. But that's kind of my question for you is, do you think the Bucks, if they don't win, change their roster up a little bit, or do you think they run it back next year?
The biggest thing for the Milwaukee Bucks, at least this year, in the sense of like, yes, they beat the Nets and credit to them for that, but the reason like they're missing their biggest, like, I guess, impactful player in a sense other than Giannis and Chris Middleton. And that's Dante DiVincenzo. Now, that man's used to hitting bucket after bucket in crunch time. Like, you know what I'm saying? He's a better version, obviously, of Pat Connaughton. And so I think what they're missing really is just his impact in the sense of hitting shots and being able to guard the ball as decent as he can. And so I don't see a problem with them running it back. The only issue is, what are you going to do with PJ Tucker? The only issue is, how are you going to, incorporate Bobby Portis and all of these other players? Like, what are you going to do with Jeff Teague? Is Jeff Teague going to lose minutes? Like, whatever the case may be, I don't know what they're going to do in the sense of their role players. Maybe we see a few like players change, and join this team in the offseason. But I think they have a shot. At the end of the day, it's the NBA. Anything can happen. Like we saw this year, a lot of injuries happen. And so I think we're just going to have to see how their careers end up and how the Bucks, are next year. But I think DiVincenzo, not being able to be here is huge for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, you may be right about DiVincenzo being one of the guys that was a key role for the Bucks coming off the bench. But I don't know if the Bucks don't win it this year. Obviously, you just signed Giannis Antetokounmpo to that 5-year max extension, so you're going to have him under contract for the next 5 years. He's your best player. I don't think necessarily Chris Middleton is the problem. If they don't win the championship this year, who's going to be the odd man out? It's going to be Jrue Holiday, and I know the Bucks just gave him that 4-year extension that's pretty much max money as well. So they're locked in on these three guys going forward. How you maybe surround them with different players possibly is going to be the question, or whether or not you can maybe potentially trade Jrue Holiday for something like a different another. I believe that the Bucks need a killer instinct player, someone that's going to be that guy that is going to be a 30-point that could get you the 30 points easily without even a question. We know Giannis, he can be able to do that at some point, but the guy can't shoot the basketball. Chris Middleton, as you guys mentioned before, he's so inconsistent that the guy can drop 40 points one game and drop 15 the next. Like, that's not going to be the guy. So maybe you look to something like Damian Lillard or something like that. If he does indeed become available, to potentially trade for him, that could be a guy that takes Milwaukee over to the next level. That could, if Damian Lillard gets traded to the Bucks, they will win the championship easily, in my opinion.
Okay, here's the potential trade. I don't know how the money would work, but if you're the Bucks, are you willing to trade Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, and 2 or 3 first-round picks for Dame?
I wouldn't be willing to trade both of them, and especially 3 first-round picks. That to me sounds like a lot for one player, because you're losing a lot of firepower if you do that.
You are,
in my opinion.
but you're gaining a consistent superstar. Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton don't show up more than half the series. Jrue Holiday's been showing up less than half the series. Chris Middleton's been about 50-50 in terms of when he plays good and when he doesn't. You add Dame's showing out every night. Dame's hitting clutch shots in the fourth quarter. Dame's opening the floor. Imagine a Dame and Giannis pick and roll. Unstoppable, because you either got to go, if you go under Damian Lillard, he's hitting a 3. If you go over the top, you've got Giannis for an easy dunk. I think in my opinion, it might be worth it. Yes, you're losing 2 starting players and a couple first-round picks, but you're gaining someone that can go out there and drop 40 points more consistently than those 2 players can go out there and drop 30 points, in my opinion. I think it's more likely that Dame goes out and drops 40 points per game in the playoffs than it is that Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday are going to go out there and drop 30 points per game in the playoffs. That's why I kind of think it's worth it for the consistency aspect. Yes, you're losing arguably 2 all-star players for one, but you're gaining that second superstar. Giannis needs that second superstar. This year, because of the injuries, they've kind of gotten away with it, and they've gotten clutch I'm not going to completely hate on Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday because they have had some clutch performances like last night we saw out of Chris Middleton. We've seen in games 5 and 6 in that Atlanta series, Drew Holiday showed up then, but we're not seeing it consistently, which is why I think you got to look at all options. And if you can get Damian Lillard for those two, I think it's an option that you might have to take.
I mean, that's the question for a lot of NBA teams. How much is too much for one player? And obviously, Damian Lillard is going to be the big fish on the trade market this offseason. If he indeed does get traded, it's not necessarily a guarantee that he does, but it's definitely possible for the right price. But how much are you willing to give up? And I know in that case, you're saying that they should give up Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, and 3 first-round picks. But that's, to me, that's a lot. A lot. You're gutting your team for one player. I know you're going to get the consistency from a superstar player, but you're losing two really good defensive players, guys that are easily combined can get you 40 points a night. That's something that could be a huge blow to the Bucks because I don't know if Damian Lillard is that guy defensively. Offensively, we know he's the guy. But if you do trade for Damian Lillard, who else are you going to surround him and Giannis together with? Because I believe you're going to need another star player if you're going to come out of the Eastern Conference, especially with Brooklyn running it back with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, and a bunch of other Eastern Conference teams are bound to get better. I don't know necessarily if that would be the right move.
Throw Dante into that starting lineup. You guys have been talking about DiVincenzo and how much they're missing him. You make that trade, you throw him at the 3, there you go. Or at the 2, I guess you'd probably have Dame at the 1, him at the 2. I think that's a solid starting lineup right there. I know that Dame is obviously not the defensive player that Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton aren't, but he brings so much that it's not like he's a bad defender. He's really not a bad defender. He goes out there and he tries really hard defensively, and that's kind of a lot of what you need to ask for out of someone defensively. And I think if you see kind of how the league is today, offense matters more than defense. As much as I hate to say it, I think ultimately you need to be at least relatively decent defensively to win a championship. Like you can't be a bottom defensive team and win, but I think offense still means more in the NBA today than it does defense. And that's why I think that trade would make sense for him.
Yeah, of course, Sebastian.
I can't disagree. Not, if Dame goes there, honestly, even with Brooklyn and all that, I see them obviously not having Middleton and Drew Holiday, but ultimately getting other role players to step up and step in to replace those not as impactful roles, but whether it's defensively or whatever the case may be. You have DiVincenzo coming back. I think ultimately Dame and Giannis would be something else. And, I definitely, if that does happen, I definitely could see that team winning a ring.
It would just be crazy to think 1 year off. This is the first time the Bucks are in the finals with this group. If you don't win it this year, it'd be hard for me to justify blowing up the group that got to the finals.
No, 100%.
Even if they do lose. I mean, it's going to be tough.
It's called being honest with yourself, though.
It comes down to honestly how this group, with the addition of bringing back Dante DiVincenzo, how this group plays next year. Because we saw it with the Miami Heat. Obviously we dealt with multiple, people getting COVID, then injuries up the freaking wazoo. So it was just a very unfortunate year, but it led to some moves. It led to us, off season, not signing certain people. It led to us, making moves at the deadline, whatever the case may be. So it just comes down to how are they going to play and who can they retain going into next year.
Well, I think what it comes down to, it's not really Chris Middleton because he's been slightly more consistent, even though he still is inconsistent. But how much do you trust Drew Holiday going into next year after you see what he's done so far in the playoffs? Mm-hmm. That's kind of my big thing. Yes, on paper, Drew Holiday seems like you're giving up a lot in trade, but recently in the playoffs, he just hasn't showed up. He hasn't been playing well. You can throw in a lot of players to go out there and shoot 4-20, in my opinion. That's what he shot last night, and he's been shooting that kind of all series. You can find a role player to go in there and fill in those minutes and take less shots than he's taking. And yes, you can't fill in his defensive role because he is a great defensive player. But what it comes down to, really, like you said it'd be weird if they blew up a team that just made it to the finals. But what it comes down to is being honest with yourself. Can you trust Drew Holiday? And if the answer is yes, then by all means, I guess run it back, see what happens. But I think the Bucks GM is definitely going to have a lot to think about if they don't win this finals.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's definitely a lot of conversation to talk about when it comes to the whether if it's not even a given yet that the Bucks are going to lose the finals yet, but it's still a lot. It's still a conversation to be had, especially in the offseason. If they do lose, there's going to be a lot of movement going on in this NBA. Damian Lillard could be at the center. Ben Simmons could be at the center of this. There's going to be a lot of star players moving around, I believe. So it's just a conversation. But besides that, I think that's going to be it for the Suns Bucks conversation in Game 4 as they get ready to move on to Game 5. I want to talk about now. The next topic we're going to talk about is the USA men's national team. Of course, coming off 2 losses to Nigeria and Australia, and of course, winning against Argentina. Bradley Beal was the focal point in those 3 games. Now he has, as of this morning, he's officially been placed in the health and safety protocols, putting him in jeopardy for the United States men's basketball team going to Tokyo as they're about to head off to Tokyo next week. I believe that's going to be a huge. I mean, it's going to, as of right now, I believe the USA team is struggling offensively to get it going. Obviously, they're going to get Devin Booker, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday once the finals are over. But it's definitely critical to have Bradley Beal overseas in Tokyo because the guy, he's a scoring machine. He was that close to being number 1 in scoring this year behind Stephen Curry. So he's a major piece for the USA to go as they're getting ready to go into the Olympics, offensively and defensively, because he's also a good defensive player. So it would be a huge blow if he is not able to continue playing for USA.
I think if you look at it, you might think that, but Bradley Beal, in the couple games that I've watched, has not played well in the Olympics, honestly. And I think this team has so many star players that even though the United, they haven't figured it out yet. They look like they kind of figured out against Argentina because I believe going into the exhibitions before any games started, wasn't Argentina the second favorite behind the United States? Like, weren't they supposed to be the second best
I don't know if it
team?
was Argentina. I think it might be Spain. That's the
It might
second
have been
best.
Spain, exactly. But I know Argentina is still usually one of those top 3 teams in the Olympics every kind of 4 years that it comes around. And even in the World Championships, Argentina usually has a very solid team. And the United States finally came out and took care of business. But with that being said, I don't think, yes, losing Bradley Beal is huge. But like you said, you're getting 3 players that can easily fill in his minutes, maybe not offensively as well, but that doesn't matter. I think losing him is a big deal because he is one of your star players. He's one of your starting players who can arguably go out there and drop 30, 40 points on ease some nights. But like with that being said, there are so many star players on this team. It should not matter at the end of the day. The United States has way more talent than any other roster. And I know we've been saying that, but look, what it comes down to is this team just needs more time together. They just need to mesh together. The more and more they play and practice together, the better they're going to get. And what it comes down to is going into those first couple games, the United States team was only with each other for basically a week and a half. Most other Olympic teams were with each other for a full month. So that's a full month of practicing, watching film, playing together, getting a feel for each other, and being able to see what works for the team and what doesn't. The United States really didn't have that luxury going into the first couple games. They were kind of learning on the fly. They only had like 3 or 4 practices, I think, before that first game. Like I said, they had only been with each other for a certain amount of period. I think even though Bradley Beal, on paper, you would think is a big loss, they have so many star players to fill in those minutes that it really doesn't matter. But the biggest thing is, can the United States figure out how to play with each other? Can they figure out how to play well with all those stars on the courts? And I think the answer is yes. I think even though I kind of even reacted harshly to them losing those first couple games, which I think most people should have, because even though they didn't have much time together, these teams shouldn't have been able to compete with the United States. But as
The
long as the
USA,
United States, no, sorry,
USA
go
hasn't
ahead.
lost. I don't believe USA's lost a basketball game in like God knows how long. And those 2 games was a shock to a lot of people.
No, I saw a stat. I don't remember how many years. I think it was from 1992 until this Olympics. So like the first time professionals were allowed to play for the U.S. The U.S. was 54-2 in exhibition games, and then in their first 2 games in this Olympics, they were 0-2. So they doubled their losses in one Olympics than they had since 1992. That alone speaks for itself. I mean, the U.S. Yes, they struggled early, but I don't expect this to continue. They're going to figure it out. There's just too many stars. They have their talent. outmatches the other teams by so much that I truly don't think it matters. Once they figure it out, it's going to go back to 20-point wins for the U.S., and they're going to win the gold medal, I think, without a problem. And I think, like I said, Bradley Beal's a big loss, but they'll be able to fill his minutes.
I mean, when it comes down to that, I mean, yes, I guess you guys were shocked with the whole Nigeria losing or beating, the United States team and da 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 da. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's an exhibition game. Sure, we haven't lost anything or any games in quite some time, but I'm not too concerned about an exhibition game when it comes down to ultimately we're going to be the better squad, as we always will be when it comes down to it. What exhibition games are meant to be is to get practice and to get reps in with your team. And so they got their reps in. 2-3 games in, they finally blow out Argentina without Jason Tatum, because Jason Tatum obviously has some soreness in his I think it was right knee or whatever the case may be. Look, they got their games in, they got their reps in. Now, after blowing out Argentina, there's absolutely no excuse whether Bradley Beal plays or not. There's no excuse for this team to start losing, because you finally got into rhythm. You got your experience, to say the least. Now it's just time to lock in and just go. Start pushing this. All right. So, I mean, that's my perspective. You guys could probably have a different opinion on that, but I think exhibition games don't matter to anything at all, at least to me. They lost. Look at those losses. Watch film. Come back. And clearly they ended up winning against Argentina. So it is what it is. But we'll see when it comes to Bradley Beal and him being on COVID or safety protocol. We'll see what the impact of Devin Booker, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday is when they, come here after the finals, as well as let's see how this kind of impacts the team. I think they play one more on the 16th against Australia. They play 2 more. Oh yeah, I see it here. Yeah, they play Australia on the 16th at 3 p.m. Pacific time, and they play against Spain on July 18th. Okay, so I mean, we'll see exactly how this goes and how the team, kind of plays without Bradley Beal. But again, in my opinion, this could be a very hot take, but I don't give a damn about what our record is after exhibition, because them joints don't really count. So, but I don't know if you guys want to take.
It's a little bit concerning to me, if you ask, because these guys are the best of the best. No matter if you don't have any time to get chemistry together, this is like playing an all-star game for them at that point. You should be able to blow these teams out easily. Nigeria, are you kidding me right now? You let Gabe Vincent, KZ Okpala, who did not get any minutes for the Miami Heat, Precious Achua destroy you. Like, come on now. That's ridiculous.
You got to understand that coming into that game, right? In the mindset. Now, maybe they didn't go into that mindset, but you're going into a game against Nigeria, a team you're supposed to blow out by an extreme amount of points, right? Nigeria has nothing to lose. Ideally, they have literally nothing to lose. So they went out and they hooped. Now, USA probably went in game 1. I was like, it's probably going to be an easy game. Let's just go in there and just, do our thing or whatever. Shots aren't falling. Calls aren't being made because they're so used to being babied. So many things went wrong for USA basketball, and they kind of hit them in the gut. And it was kind of like a little, a humbling experience, to say the least, for them. And then they go into the Australia game. They go into the Australia game, and then that Australia team is, I feel like, one of the most slept on teams in the entire Olympics. Yes, Nigeria beat us, but who cares? I actually like that Australia
is the worst team.
No, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
That's a bad take, Montana.
You can say they're the worst team all you want, but that team, if anything, the team is better without Ben Simmons. Let's be real. We saw how Ben Simmons played this year. If anything, this team is way better without Ben Simmons. You know what I'm saying? Like, that team is probably one of the most underrated and underappreciated teams in this, tourney, I guess you can say, or whatever, in this freaking whole, Olympics, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm going to agree with both of you a little bit. Montana, yes, it is very embarrassing for the U.S. to lose those games. But what it comes down to is, a little bit of, yes, Nigeria had nothing to lose. The U.S. had everything to lose. But also, it goes back to their different kind of ref style. The U.S. was not used to this kind of tough sort of basketball where the cute kind of touchy fouls aren't getting called. They were, and if you looked in those first two games, that's a lot of their offense was trying to draw those fouls. They were trying to get those easy free throws, and when you're not getting those, it kind of throws off your flow of the game because when you go from when you're so used to you play an entire NBA season, a lot of those players were in the playoffs and played extended amount of time in the playoffs. You're so used to a certain kind of calls being made. You're used to like everything, like those touch fouls being called in the lane. And then you go to a league where they're not getting called. It's tough to kind of adjust to that right away. And I don't want to give too many excuses for the US team because yes, like you said, Montana, they have so much star power. It should not matter. I completely agree. That's why I'm trying not to give them too many excuses, but I definitely can see that it's hard to adjust to different ref styles. It really is. I mean, even when I used to play basketball, I can definitely attest to that. If you went from a game from when refs didn't call anything to a game where they called everything, it's hard to adjust your game right away to that, especially since Nigeria was playing to that toughness. Nigeria was playing defense very tough. They were playing kind of hands-on defense. They weren't going to allow any easy buckets in the lane. They were going to force the U.S. to make tough three-point shots, and it worked out for them. It really did at the end of the day. They hit shots and made it tough for the U.S., and the U.S. wasn't able to hit enough shots. But with that being said, the U.S. still shouldn't have lost, like you said, Montana. It's embarrassing to think about. There's a reason they were 54-2 in exhibition games from 1992 until this point. It's because they have way more talent, and they still do. I see a lot of accounts saying, oh, like the talent around the world is caught up to the U.S. No, it hasn't. Yes, there are some superstars from other countries. Let's not forget Luka Doncic, Nikolai Jokic, players like that. But the talent all around has not reached the United States. Look at that. Look at the teams that have beaten us. And I would like you guys, any normal NBA fan, name 5 players off that roster that you see play in the NBA. You can't because they don't have that kind of superpower that the United States does. But with that being said, like Sebastian said earlier, the games don't necessarily mean anything. I don't expect the United States to get anything less than gold in the Olympics. And I honestly expect them. They finally found their groove. I don't think there are any excuses for them now. If they lose after this point, then maybe we need to hop on the what the hell's going on? Like, how can you possibly lose after having all these games under your belt? But up until this point, I guess they've had a couple valid excuses for themselves.
No, I mean, I pulled up the box scores because I was genuinely curious of who played poorly shooting wise and offensively against Australia. Jason Tatum is 0 for 6 from the 3, 4 for 12 overall. That's pretty much the worst of the worst when it comes to poor performances offensively from that Australia USA game. Everyone else shot about 50 to 55% from the field or didn't shoot the ball at all. So I mean, at the end of the day, you just got to credit Australia in that game because God bless America. I'm looking at it and they got their contributions from everybody, unlike Team USA. Now we look at the Nigeria score and that everyone shot poorly. So it just comes down to it was their first game. You know what I'm saying? It was their first game. They just needed to get into rhythm, get that little experience of USA basketball. Because you also have to remember that ball is smaller. That ball is smaller than NBA official size. Now I don't think it's that, it shouldn't be that impactful of being smaller. And yes, they practice with it, but it's way different when it comes to, game time situations and game like experiences in that aspect. So not only did they have to deal with the different officiating, but they also had to deal with a completely different ball when it comes to, in-game competition, not to say the least.
No, yeah. And I feel like that kind of closes off on this topic, which gets us into the last topic of the day, which is a potential hiring for the New Orleans Pelicans, and that is Willie Green. Now, for those of you that might not be as familiar with Willie Green, he has won 2 championships with the Warriors. He was some sort of assistant coach for that team, which is then when he got hired to be the Suns' assistant coach. So I think, honestly, in my opinion, the Pelicans are looking at the right team or at the right guy. The Pelicans need someone in there that knows how to win, that has that championship caliber, and I think that's Willie Green. Whether or not he's that big, splashy name that people are always expecting their team to hire, no. The answer is no to that. He's not that big, splashy name. But I think that's what you need. Look at Monty Williams. Monty Williams wasn't a big, splashy name hire for the Suns, and look where he's gotten them. He's gotten them from no playoffs to the finals in 2-3. What, he's been there for 3 years now,
2 years.
Exactly.
2 years, yeah.
And I think Willie Green can kind of be that for the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans are kind of in a similar situation to what the Suns were a couple of years ago. They have a decent amount of talent on this team. It just hasn't worked out so far. Yes, and I think they need also that vet player. They don't have that vet leadership over there in the Pelicans. I think you hire Willie Green, you get a vet leadership going in there, and this Pelicans team can be a playoff contender. Now, with that being said, this guy is not the lock to be the coach yet. There's been no deal done yet. This is just all speculation. A lot of people think he's going to be the new coach, but like I said, there has not been a deal that has been made yet. I don't think there will be until at least the finals are over with. But I kind of just want to get your guys' opinion on what you think about Willie Green as a potential hire for the Pelicans.
I personally, yes, there's no deal done, but it is, getting closer and closer and closer to being finalized. That's number one. Number two, I think it's going to be a similar situation with like Chauncey. I think he has that experience. He has that, the players love him as an assistant coach. So now he has the ability to go coach a team. Now he has the ability to run his own show. You know what I'm saying? Rather than being behind a Steve Kerr, being behind a Monty Williams, two teams that have made the finals. Now he can be that man. The only problem is for both, Chauncey and him are going to be like, are they going to turn into a David Fizdale where it just ultimately just doesn't pan out? You get put in a horrible situation like these. You could have a great roster and it just doesn't go your way in the aspect of, their season, and then ultimately getting all the blame and all this, da 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 da. So as much as a great coach or a great assistant as he is, and all the players love him that play for those organizations that he's been a part of, it's going to come down to ultimately, at least in my opinion, how is he going to, turn that over to be an actual head coach? Is it going to be a successful ride, or is this going to be a tragedy in the making because you're potentially losing Lonzo Ball in New Orleans because he might be going to your Chicago Bulls, Blake, or he might be going to the Knicks. Those are two teams that are speaking highly and two teams that Lonzo Ball himself are very interested in, to say the least.
We got to remember also that he's going to be a restricted free agent. So any offer that the Knicks and the Bulls offer him, the Pelicans can match, and it would
but
be
it's not looking like
it's
looking like they're not going to be matching regardless of the fact. Like it's looking very unlikely that the Pelicans are happy enough to keep Lonzo Ball. I think they're already looking.
Be a huge mistake.
Well, I'm just, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I personally love Lonzo Ball. I've been following, I've said this countless many times. I've been following the Ball family in general since they were very young. So just continuing that, I think depending on their situation with Lonzo and what they do with that roster, it's going to be something interesting to see for Willie Green. Does he go into, like I said, with a Fizdale thing, a roster that has the potential to be great? Or are they going to ruin Willie Green's, name and like basically put all the blame on him to try and rebuild yet again the New Orleans organization?
Even with that, the reason that Monty Williams is such a great coach, it's not just because, he's a great coach, but the reason the Suns are having so much success, yes, you have Devin Booker and you have DeAndre Ayton, but the key was Chris Paul. His entrance into the squad was the reason why they took off. Now, he's the guy, the veteran on that team that put Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton on the right path to be great. Chris Paul is a great leader. He's a great player. He's been there. He's been through everything that you can possibly imagine in the NBA. So that was the guy that the Suns needed. What the Pelicans need is with Brandon Ingram. I know he's been in a lot of trade rumors recently, which I don't understand why he's been in a lot of trade rumors. Because in my opinion, him and Zion are the two players you should be building around. Those two guys are, especially Brandon Ingram. He has a lot of Kevin Durant inside him. He's a scorer at will. Zion Williamson is more like Giannis than he is like somebody than a guy that can score the basketball. He's a guy that can bully you down in the paint like Giannis can. So those are similar comps. Obviously, I believe that Brandon Ingram is definitely a better player than Chris Middleton is. So those are definitely different contrasts. But Lonzo Ball, man, that guy, I think he's going to break out this year. I think this guy has the potential to be a dominant point guard in the league. We already know he has the passing IQ to be a great player, but his 3-point shooting has gone up consistently since he left the Los Angeles Lakers. And that's something that you cannot, in my opinion, you cannot lose that. I believe you need that floor general on the court. Eric Bledsoe cannot be that guy for the New Orleans Pelicans. As much as you want to think that he can be the leading point guard on that team, Eric Bledsoe is not that good of a player, if you ask me. He's a decent player that can come off the bench and give you 15 points. He's more of like a six-man. Alonzo Ball needs to be on that squad if they're going to make any kind of noise in the Western Conference. Because if he's not there, I don't know who you're going to replace him with. That's my opinion on that.
No, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. It'll be interesting to see what they do. And with the Brendan Ingram trades, I've been seeing a lot of rumors about they don't think that Brendan Ingram and Zion can work together. I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that take, but that's what I've been seeing with all the rumors with trading Brendan Ingram. So it'll just be, I'm interested to see what the Pelicans do, whether they hire Willie Green, what they do about Lonzo, what they do about Brandon Ingram. This team has at least a decent set of pieces to where there's some sort of future for them, but I don't know what they're going to do with it. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see what the Pelicans front office does this offseason.
No, yeah. It's going to be very interesting. That this is a very crucial year for the Pelicans, in my opinion, because it's kind of, it determines their future. One thing I really want to say and touch on the Montana, excuse you. That team, that Phoenix Suns team with Monty went 8-0 in the bubble, number one. Number two, that team could have easily made the playoffs if it weren't for
they wouldn't be in the finals.
Okay. Now I'm not disagreeing with you on that. But that team was still doing crazy things and could have made a deep push in the playoffs last season if it weren't for the ability of them not being able to make the playoffs for the sole reason of Devin Booker being out for a month, DeAndre Ayton dealing with the 25-game suspension of PEDs, as well as being out for, I think it was 20 games from his injury, and Aaron Baines being injured, and Dario Saric being injured. They basically got the injury bug last year in the entire year before even the postseason. And so now they're here. They got a better point guard, not Ricky Rubio. They got a better point guard in CP3, who got that, like you said, leadership ability to carry them here. But I still think they were a great squad last year, and they were a very well-rounded team last year to be able to compete. But ultimately, yes, you're right down on the CP3 thing. But I just wanted to give you a little correction on that.
All right, sir.
Flash.
Yeah, I guess.
All right. So the last thing we got to do is Sebastian. Are you ready for Sebastian, aka Rapid's rapid fire stats?
This guy. All right. You're such a troll. All right. Let me see. Where do I want to start? All right, before the game last night, over the last two games, Giannis Antetokounmpo joins Shaquille O'Neal as the only players to average 40 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, and 60% from the field over a 2-game span in the NBA Finals series. Lionel Messi and Barcelona reached an agreement for the forward to sign a new 5-year deal. Sources confirmed to ESPN. As far as individual trophies, Messi is far above anyone in history. He's 6 Ballon d'Or trophies, 6 European Golden Boots, and 8 Ballon d'Or. My bad.
Funny. That's a funny one.
I could totally have butchered that. I'm gonna keep it a bean. I definitely could have butchered that. But on to the next thing. 6 European Golden Boots and 8 La Liga scoring titles are all of his records. What else? Devin Booker already has the most points in finals history by a player with 10 or fewer points in the previous game. Previous record was 35 by George McCann in 1943, finals game 3. Devin Booker went for 42 points in game 4 while Chris Middleton had 40. It is the 4th time in NBA Finals history that opposing players scored 40 points in the same game. The last instance was Shaquille O'Neal and Allen Iverson in the 2001 NBA Finals. Giannis and Chris Middleton are the 3rd pair of teammates, 4th instance over the last 50 years to each have a 40-point game in a single NBA Finals. The others are obviously, I think we remember this one, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson. Devin Booker joined Rick Barry, Wilt Chamberlain as the only players to record at least 3 40-point games in their first career postseason. Rick Barry in 1967 with 5, Devin Booker this year obviously with 3, and Wilt Chamberlain with 3 in 1960. Chris Middleton has made 15 game-tying or go-ahead shots in the fourth quarter / OT this postseason. That's now tied with LeBron James in 2007 for the most in a single playoffs in the last 25 seasons. And then one last thing that just came in 4 minutes ago, or two things, sorry. One came in just 4 minutes ago. Boston leads the AL East after finishing last in 2020. The Red Sox went from worst to first in 2012, 2013, and 2015, 2016, and could do it again this season. The only other team to do it multiple times in the divisional era is the Diamondbacks. Now, one thing I want to cover really quick before you guys give your opinions on: 7 franchise players, Bucks wide receiver Chris Godwin, Jets safety Marcus May, Panthers right tackle Taylor Moton, Bears Mr. Montana, Mr. Blake, Bears wide receiver Allen Robinson, Jags offensive tackle Cam Robinson, and Washington football team guard Brandon Sheriff. Oh, wait, and Saints safety Marcus Williams have until 4 o'clock today to sign extensions. No deals likely at this time per sources. Now, that is all of the stats, as well as obviously a little talk about the NFL. Go give your insight, I guess.
I think there is no insight. That's all. Those are stats right there. That's the whole point, my friend.
Yeah,
All
true.
right.
I think the only insight maybe is, I guess it was kind of a question, like maybe you're asking us if we think any of those players are going to get a deal done by 4 o'clock. And the answer for me is no, because they haven't gotten a deal so far yet. None of those, at least for A-Rob's sense too, there haven't been talks in months about a contract extension. I'm not worried because guess what? He's going to be playing for the Bears this year. They're going to look at it, signing him into an extension next year. Hopefully they get it done. I think they will. But yeah, I think those players got franchise tagged for a reason. If they haven't gotten a contract extension up until this point, I don't see anything changing really for that. But with that being said, I think unless Montana has something else to add.
Nah, I think that's going to be pretty much it for the rapid fire stats and today's show of Unspoken Rules. If you guys haven't already, there's a lot of things going on Unspoken Productions recently and as of late. There's a couple partnerships that we're getting ready to announce pretty soon that we're pretty excited about. As far as that, we've just launched a new pop culture centered show called Nerddom over on Unspoken Productions. Myself, and Blake have recently just dropped a Loki finale spoiler review, what our thoughts are on the Loki season finale and the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Besides that, as far as this show goes, there's going to be a lot of things changing starting next week. As the NBA season winds down, we're going to now start transitioning over into the NFL and college football. Our division previews will start next week at some point, probably later in the week as the NBA Finals. I believe the last possible date is Tuesday, I think, or if I'm not mistaken, or Thursday, one of those days. So after that, NFL season is going to take priority. Season previews are going to start. Player previews are going to start. Fantasy football season is about to start. So we're excited about that. Besides that, if you guys are listening on audio formats, please leave a follow, subscribe to the channel. Leave a rating and review. If you guys are watching on YouTube, subscribe. Leave a comment on the comment section. Leave a like on the video. Liking the video is the most important thing you can do to support the channel. Besides that, you guys can find me over on Instagram and Twitter at Wildcard Movies. Sebastian, where can they find you?
Rabid FL on all social medias.
And they can find me at Blake Spillers on all social media.
All right, that's going to be it for Unspoken Rules number 29. It's crazy we've already done 29 episodes. We will see you guys for episode 30. Peace.